Welcome to our channel Saraswati. Let's listen to this story in order to improve our English. Please answer the questions that will follow after the story. Sophie Carson stood at the bus stop, shivering against the biting wind. The early morning chill was unforgiving, but she had grown used to it. She wrapped her worn-out coat tighter around her and glanced at her watch. It was almost 6:30 a.m. She was already running late. Her 5-year-old son Ethan clung to her hand, his small face peeking out from under a woolen hat. His eyes were still heavy with sleep, but he didn't complain. He never did. Sophie admired his resilience, even if it broke her heart to see him growing up so fast, forced to be more mature than other kids his age. After her divorce, 2 years ago, Sophie's life had turned upside down. She had married young, believing in the fairy tale of everlasting love. But reality had been harsh. Her ex-husband Mark had left them, leaving Sophie with nothing but debt and a broken heart. Since then, it had been a struggle to make ends meet. She worked 2 jobs, one as a waitress at a local diner during the day and another cleaning offices at night. The pay barely covered the bills, but she did everything she could to provide for Ethan. They boarded the bus, and Sophie glanced at Ethan, who was gazing out the window, lost in his own thoughts. She wished she could give him more, a better life, a stable home, new clothes that weren't hand-me-downs. But most of all, she wished she could find the time to be with him, to share in his joys and fears. The day passed in a blur of customers, coffee orders, and tired smiles. By the time her shift ended at the diner, Sophie was exhausted. But she still had another job to go to. She picked Ethan up from the neighbor, who watched him after school, and they headed home for a quick dinner. As she prepared to leave for her night job, Ethan tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, can we read a story tonight?" Sophie's heart ached. It had been weeks since they had done that, and she could see the longing in his eyes. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I have to work tonight. But tomorrow, I promise, okay?" Ethan nodded, his disappointment evident. But he didn't argue. Sophie kissed his forehead and headed out, the weight of guilt pressing down on her. That night, as Sophie cleaned the empty offices, she allowed herself to dream, just for a moment, of a better life. What if she could find a job that paid enough so she didn't have to work too? What if she could spend more time with Ethan? What if someone could love her again? The thought seemed impossible. Who would want to take on the burden of a single mother struggling to survive? But the thought lingered, bringing a flicker of warmth to her cold heart. One day, everything changed. It was a Friday afternoon, and the diner was unusually busy. As Sophie hurried between tables, a man walked in. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. When he looked at Sophie, it was as if the rest of the world faded away. He sat at a corner table, and when Sophie came to take his order, he smiled at her. "I will have whatever you recommend." Sophie blushed, something she hadn't done in years. "The apple pie is good. I mean, if you like pie." "Pie sounds great," he said, his smile whitening. As she brought him his pie, they struck up a conversation. His name was Michael, and he was new in town, having moved here for a job at a nearby tech company. There was something about him, something that made Sophie feel comfortable, like she could be herself without judgment. Over the next few weeks, Michael became a regular at the diner. He always sat at Sophie's table, and they talked about everything: life, dreams, even the struggles Sophie faced. He listened with genuine interest and never once making her feel like a burden. One evening, As Sophie wiped down the counter, Michael lingered after everyone else had left. He approached her, nervousness evident in his posture. Sophie, I have been wanting to ask you something. Would you like to go out with me sometime? Maybe dinner when you are free? Sophie was stunned. She hadn't been on a date since before Ethan was born, and the idea of someone being interested in her seemed too good to be true. But as she looked into Michael's eyes, she saw sincerity and hope. I'd like that, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Their first date was simple, a dinner at a cozy restaurant in town. For the first time in years, Sophie allowed herself to relax and enjoy the moment. Michael was charming, but more importantly, he was kind. He didn't just see Sophie as a struggling single mother, he saw her as a person, someone worth knowing. As their relationship grew, Sophie found herself falling for him despite the fears that lingered in the back of her mind. She worried about Ethan, about whether it was fair to bring someone new into his life, but Michael was patient and understanding. He took the time to get to know Ethan, building a bond with him that melted Sophie's heart. Months passed, and Sophie's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. Michael helped her find a better job, one that paid enough so she could quit her night shifts. For the first time in years, she had evenings free to spend with Ethan. They read stories together, went to the park, and even took a weekend trip to the beach, something Sophie could never have afforded before. One evening, as they sat together on the porch of Sophie's small house, watching Ethan play in the yard, Michael turned to her, his expression serious. Sophie, he began, taking her hand in his. I love you. I love Ethan too. I know life hasn't been easy for you, but I want to be there for you. For both of you, I want us to be a family. Tears filled Sophie's eyes as she realized just how much she had begun to love this man, this kind-hearted, patient man who had brought light into her life when she had thought all hope was lost. I love you too, Michael, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. And I had love for us to be a family. They married the following summer in a small ceremony attended by close friends and family. As Sophie walked down the aisle, her heart swelled with gratitude and joy. She had found a second chance at love, a chance to build a better life for herself and Ethan. With Michael by her side, Sophie's life transformed. They moved into a larger home where Ethan finally found his own room, a backyard to play in. Sophie no longer had to worry about money or working herself to exhaustion. Instead, she could focus on the things that truly mattered: her son, her husband, and the future they were building together. And as the years passed, Sophie often thought back to those dark days when she had felt so alone and hopeless. She had never imagined that life could turn out around so dramatically, that she could find love again and escape the grip of poverty. But she had learned that sometimes life had a way of surprising you, of offering second chances when you least expect them. In the end, Sophie's story was not just about finding love again, it was about resilience, about never giving up, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. And it was about the power of love to heal, to transform, to bring light to even the darkest of times. Now, if you would like, you can go back to the start, mute my voice, and speak yourself. And now please answer the following questions. How did Sophie and Michael met? Where does Sophie works? How old is Ethan? What is Sophie's ex-husband's name? What is Sophie's dream? Thank you for watching.